seventh grade, I was running down on kickoff and I hit a kid, was forced to fumble, then resulted in a touchdown. Fortunately, I don't remember this play. I also don't remember going up to my teammates at halftime and asking them when does the game start, or not knowing who the president of the United States was. It wasn't until later that day I woke up in a CAT scan. The doctor told me I had suffered my first concussion. Concussions are a rising epidemic throughout the United States. According to Mayo Clinic, the CDC reports that 1.6 to 3.8 million athletes are diagnosed each year with concussions. This number is relatively low because we lack the understanding of what concussions are. So what I'm going to talk to you today are about concussions. I'm going to tell you about the two types of concussions, the diagnosis, the treatment, and the two post-concussion diseases. So what concussions are, well, I'm credible to speak on this topic because I have suffered concussions firsthand. I've seen it in the sports clinic, and I've also gathered additional information off of mayoclinic.com and Bleacher Report. So let's get started. What a concussion is it's a neurological impairment in the brain. So what occurs is our brain is a 3-pound organ which sits inside the skull, surrounded by cerebral spinal fluid. When a blunt force trauma occurs, the brain is rattled around. When this happens, the brain starts to bleed, which causes neurological impairments. So there are two types of concussions. There's whiplash concussions and rotational concussions. Whiplash concussions occur when the head is jerked forward and back in a very hard motion. This occurs a lot of times with football players. If they hit the back of their head, then the brain shoots forward, hits the front of the skull, and then bleeding occurs, and then you get a concussion. The second type of concussion is rotational concussion. This is when the head is jerked side to side in a very quick motion. This causes shearing and tearing of the meninges or the brain tissue, which causes bleeding, which then causes the concussion. So those are the two types of concussions. How do we diagnose and treat them? Diagnosing a concussion is tough because we can't physically see the injury firsthand. It's not like breaking your leg where you can see a bone sticking out or you can see swelling occurring. What we do to diagnose concussions are we treat it with neurological testing and CAT scans. Neurological testing will allow the trainer to test the cognitive abilities of the athlete. So if that trainer pulls the player out and they can't remember what they did that day, they can't remember what 2 times 2 is, then they're going to be sent directly to the hospital. At the hospital, the doctors will put them through a CAT scan, which will give the brain which will give the doctors a 3D image of the brain, which they can actually see where the bleeding occurs. So that's how we diagnose it, how we treat it. We treat concussions with rest, acetaminophen, and the return to play. When you get a concussion, rest is the biggest thing. When you sleep, the brain will actually repair itself. So it's just to get loads of sleep and don't watch TV or anything like that, because that'll just mess up your brain. And the second type of treatment is acetaminophen or Tylenol. This is huge because this will just combat the headache. You don't want to take anti-inflammatories if you get a concussion, because this will actually thin the blood and cause more bleeding to occur. The third type of treatment is return to play. At the start of the season, each athlete is required to take an online test, and they get a base score. This is they test the athlete's cognitive abilities. If they get a concussion, then the athlete has to take the test until they reach their original score. So that's how we diagnose and treat concussions. What are the 2 long-term effects? 2 long-term effects are chronic traumatic encephalopathy, or CTE, and post-concussion syndrome. CTE is a degenerative brain disorder which affects the frontal lobe. The frontal lobe of our brain controls our emotions and our thinking. On BleacherReport.com, Tyler Conway interviewed Dr. Bayliss, who is a UCLA professor. Him and his students did a research study, and they found that 34 ex-NFL players had CTE prior to their deaths. Probably the most prominent NFL player to suffer from CTE was Javon Belcher. He was an ex-Chiefs player. In 2012, he shot his girlfriend 9 times, and then he drove to the training camp and committed suicide. A week later, it was found out that he suffered from CTE. It's just a huge disease which will just, it'll throw everything off your emotion. It'll cause emotional distress, depression, etc. The second type of disease is post-concussion syndrome. This occurs when the athlete suffers a second concussion very quickly to the first. So if a football player goes out on Friday night, they suffer a concussion, and they go to practice Monday, and they participate, and they get hit in the head again, then their symptoms are going to last for a year, a month, 3 months to a year after that. So that's a huge no-no. If you get a concussion, you need to report it. So those are the 2 types of diseases. So let's conclude. Today I talked to you about concussions. I told you about the 2 types, the treatment, and the diagnosis. I've also mentioned 2 types of diseases. I hope this interests you, and I encourage you to go do some research on your own. Thank you.
Okay.